Creepypastas. They're what I like to refer as the modern day 80s, 90s horror films. These films are either the cheesiest, campiest films you'll ever see, or ones that'll stand the test of time as some of the best in this genre and film as a whole. And while creepypastas aren't really comparable to horror films, they have those two paths those films can fall under. They're either the worst stories ever that turn around to be ironically hilarious,
Don't turn around.
or they're some of the best pieces of horror out there. There's plenty of examples of good creepypastas, but there's one that I've been wanting to talk about for the longest time. It stuck with me for the longest time, and I see it as severely underrated. That being the Russian sleep experiment by Orange Soda. Sure, it has been praised for being great. Hell, there's apparently been film adaptations and books based on it. But it isn't enough. I see this as not only my personal favorite creepypasta, but also a terrifying way of showing the horrors of unethical human experimentation, something that was somewhat prominent during the time in which the story takes place. So, let's get into it. Oh, and content warning, as there might be some things that might make some of you uncomfortable. First, I'll go over the story in case you haven't read it or haven't seen the one video about it that got 34 million views. This takes place in 1947 Soviet Russia, in an undisclosed research facility under an unnamed military-sanctioned project. The researchers there created an experimental gas that can affect one's sleep. So they've gathered 5 political prisoners who are deemed enemy of the state to test this new gas, while also giving them the false promise of being set free if they commit to 30 days of experimentation. Things do go well for the first 5 days, though their topic of discussion with each other have gotten more dark, talking about their past trauma and complaining about how they got to where they are, while also showing signs of paranoia. After the 5th day though, the subjects stop talking with each other and start whispering to the mic and porthole in their chamber, possibly to gain the trust of the researchers there and to overthrow their fellow subjects. After day 9, one of them starts screaming and running around the chamber for 3 hours straight, which causes their vocal cords to break, now producing squeaks with little to no reaction from the other subjects. Another one starts screaming and the whispers from the mic stop, with the rest of the subjects covering up the glass and porthole that the researchers are looking through, with torn pages from a book they were given in their own feces. And eventually, the screaming stops and the chamber falls silent. After not getting any sort of response for days, despite readings showing they were still alive, on day 14 the researchers announced through the intercom,
"We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor, you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom."
and one of the subjects finally respond saying,
"We no longer want to be freed."
After many arguments about what to do after, once again, no response from the subjects, on the next day they turn off the gas, and almost immediately 3 of the subjects begin screaming and begging for their lives to have the gas turned back on. And once the soldiers step in to retrieve them, they see the corpse of one of the 5 subjects. With chunks of their meat stuffed into a drain and the other subjects looking different, with bits of their flesh and organs torn off along with exposed bones on their fingertips, making it apparent they've cannibalized themselves and the dead subject, not even touching the rations given to them on the previous days. They've also started acting extremely violent, actively refusing to leave the chamber, causing 1 soldier to be killed, another severely injured, and 5 other soldiers to kill themselves days after. Once again, they continue to beg for the gas to be turned back on, with one of them responding,
"I must remain awake."
After one researcher asked why. Tests were conducted on them, and they were found to have immense strength and strong resistances to sedatives and anesthetics. And if any one of them fell asleep, they'd immediately die, as one of them did just that. Once the 3 were sent back to the chamber, now with EEG monitors, which showed reoccurring moments of brain death, and a stimulant given by the military commander against the will of the researchers, another subject falls asleep and dies, and the only subject that can speak is now demanding for the chamber to be closed. The commander forces 3 researchers to be added to the chamber, and immediately one of them kills the commander, the second to last subject, and then themselves. The story ends with one other researcher pointing their gun at the last subject, shouting,
"I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you. What are you? I must know."
And the subject smiles.
Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go into the nocturnal haven, where we cannot tread.
The researcher pauses for a second, and then he aims his gun at the subject and kills him, with the subject's final words being,
So, nearly free.
Now, when I first read this as a kid, I was fucking terrified. I made my damnest to make sure I get my full 7 hours of sleep, and it without a doubt traumatized me. But now, while I still find it unsettling, though I'll admit there can be some overly edgy moments, and the big speech from the last subject is a bit cheesy, I still see it as amazing, whether it be for nostalgic reasons or not. I see it as this story that shows the horrors of not just Soviet Russia and the fucked up things they did, but the unethical human experiments conducted throughout history, where goals surrounding these experiments are questioned, and if these experiments are really for research, or just a way for the people running it to torture and abuse their subjects for their own fucked up depravity, breaking their subjects to pure insanity that without a doubt inspired the story. You know, I remember when this was at its peak popularity, there were many people who thought this was real, and that infamous image being spread around saying it was one of the subjects. Can't say I'm surprised, as stories like these do in fact turn out to be true, and while obviously this one's fictional, there are stories like these that are just as, if not more, messed up and horrifying than this fictional story. One of these that come to mind is the disturbing Unit 731, which also coincidentally took place during World War II, though it was done in Japan. These experiments went from them finding actual data, how else did we figure out we're made of 70% of water, to the researchers torturing and abusing their subjects just for their own fucked up reasons. I think the fact that the subjects in the Russian sleep experiment are these 5 unnamed political prisoners deemed enemies of the state, being given this false hope of being set free if they make it through 30 days of no sleep, shows how the researchers and everyone else involved could care less about them as people, and are only interested in the results given from the test. These subjects, getting their mental health pushed to its absolute limit, breaking them down where their sanity finally snaps and the researchers don't see them as human, rather these horrific monsters. This idea of these people not caring is more clear when the commander is curious as to what happens when their 3 surviving subjects are put back on the gas, despite the researchers considering to euthanize the last remaining subjects, and the commander adding 3 researchers to the chamber. All in all, just the fact that everyone in the story has no name just shows, at least from my perspective, that this unnamed project isn't really all that important from Soviet Russia's point of view, with their only goal of finding a way for their soldiers to stay awake. Or maybe I'm just looking too deep into this, and it's just meant to be a scary story with a message of, ooh, don't fall asleep or else the horrors! But I don't know. Things like this are why I love this story. And mainly, this is why I feel this creepypasta is vastly underrated, as I don't see people talking about its more realistic parts outside of the false possibility of it being real. Like, yeah, it's scary and gory or whatever, but the things surrounding it, like how no one's given a name, the part where they have the subjects retelling their traumatic past, the fact that this isn't a first-person narrative, and the feel of a World War II era human experimentation going wrong, are the reasons why this is my favorite creepypasta of all time.